Good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, April the 2nd. This is a Moscow City Council meeting. With us this evening is Scout Troop 345. Some young men here earning their merit badges. We have Committee Chair Wendy Wheeler with them, and I'd like these young men to come up here and lead us in the pledge. Here, boys, whenever you're ready. I
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and this is kind of fun because we've had three meetings in a row where we've had various scouts throughout our area, and I love Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout myself. I'm sad to admit that was 50 years ago, which is a long, long time. One of these young men asked me if I became an Eagle, and I said no, I hadn't, and it was a mistake that I made 50 years ago. So these young guys here won't make that same mistake. They'll go on up, although I was a scout for 3 years. That guy's shaking his hand, but we're going to make sure he does it. So the other two beside him will make sure and keep right on this young man to make sure he gets what he needs to get. And so with that, anyway, I appreciate the Scouts being here. It's a form of leadership, and you take the oath as a Boy Scout very, very seriously, and you follow that oath all the way through your entire adult life, and you will really make something of yourself. With that, the next thing in order is I have a proclamation on fair and affordable housing, and it's called the Fair Housing Proclamation. Whereas April 2018 marks the 50th anniversary of the passage of Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, commonly known as the Federal Fair Housing Act. And whereas the Idaho Human Rights Commission Act has prohibited discrimination in housing since 1969. And whereas equal opportunity for all, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, disability, family status, or national origin is a fundamental goal of our nation, state, and city. And whereas equal access to housing is an important component of this goal, as fundamental as the right to equal education and employment. And whereas housing is a critical component of family and community health and stability. And whereas housing choices impacts our children's access to education, our ability to seek and retain employment options, the cultural benefits we enjoy, the extent of our exposure to crime and drugs, and the quality of health care we receive in emergencies. And whereas the laws of this nation and our state seek to ensure such equality of choice for all transactions involving housing. And whereas ongoing education, outreach, and monitoring are key to raising awareness of fair housing principles, practices, rights, and responsibilities. And whereas the mission of the city's Fair and Affordable Housing Commission includes researching, analyzing, and recommending to the mayor and the council ways in which the city may further fair housing practices. And whereas among the duties of Fair and Affordable Housing Commission are to review the city code analysis, impediments to fair housing and actions plan each year to recommend changes as may deem necessary. And whereas only through continued cooperation, commitment, and support of all Idahonians can the barriers to fair housing be removed. Now therefore I, Bill Lambert, the mayor of the city of Moscow, do hereby proclaim April 2018 to be Fair Housing Month in the city of Moscow, and I urge all citizens to support the programs and policies that prevent or eliminate discriminatory housing practices. With that, I have Randy Buckle here from our Fair and Affordable Housing Commission that I would like to give this proclamation. Hi, Randy.
How are you doing tonight?
Good. How you doing?
Good, good.
We'll get a picture here.
Thank you. I would like to do that very much, yes. Mayor and council members, I really want to thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to keep the words fair and affordable for housing in the conversation throughout our community. I think that we have made great strides over the years, and we have more obstacles to overcome. We have ways to go, but we're continuing to work on that. I would like to put in just a little bit of a blurb. Later on this month, April 27th, we are holding a housing fair. It's going to be out at the Latah County Event Center from noon until 6, and we'd like to extend an invitation to you, the mayor, and to the council members. It's going to bring together lenders and realtors and contractors and builders, along with first-time home buyers and tenants, to keep the conversation going and get collaboration amongst all of the interested parties in fairness, and particularly in this one is going to be focused more on affordability issues. So April 27th, if anybody has time to stop by, please do. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for the work you do as the chair of our Fair and Affordable Housing Commission.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will move on to the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. Art made a motion to approve the consent agenda as well as Gina is a second. Any further discussion? Start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we will move on to the next thing, which is staff recognition report. Gary, do you have anything, sir?
No report this evening, Your Honor.
Gary doesn't have anything, but I do. Ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks ago, I had the privilege of going to the National League of Cities. Along with me was Gary Riedner, as well as Gina Teruscio, and there's a certificate for achievement of leadership excellence. The National League of Cities recognizes the dedication and commitment of Gary Riedner, City Supervisor of Moscow, Idaho, for the successful completion of the Bronze Certificate Leadership Fellow and the Certificate of Achievement in the Leadership Program. Now, Gary, of course, has no clue that I was going to bring this up tonight, because he's a very modest guy, and he always likes to get recognition to all those staff members, and he does a wonderful job of it. And as the mayor of Moscow and as his boss, it brings me great privilege to present this to Gary. So Gary, if you'd please come up here and we'll get your photo with me, sir. No, we on these shoes.
Oh, nice. Nice. Way to operate that camera, Lori. Strong work.
I think people will hear me enough.
There's something else I want to say about that, ladies and gentlemen, is that we recognize all of our different staff members throughout the entire Moscow City team, and there's numbers of folks out there that get all kinds of new certificates, upgrade certificates, and stay on top of the things they need to do, whether it's in our water department, our street department, whatever it is, police department, so on and so forth, and goes throughout the entire city. And so it's a big deal for all of us. And I, as the mayor, I always love it when I get a chance to talk about it. And yes, I love to brag about the people, because how strong we are as a city and how well as we do as a city is the dedication of every one of our employees, because they're a true asset to us. And for me, that's a big deal. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in with Gary. Thank you very much for your leadership, sir. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to mayor's appointments, and I have 2 of them. If I can see, here we go. That I would like council to make consideration for. Debbie Ranger Mink, who is Fair and Affordable Housing Commission, expiration at 12/31 of 2018. And Sandy Crook, Sustainable Environment Commission, expiration at 12/31 2018. So I would entertain a motion from the staff here, or council, I mean.
I would make a motion to approve both appointees.
I'd second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Brandy and a second by Art to approve both of these names to these two commissions. I'll start to roll with you, Brandy.
Aye.
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 Okay, do we have either one of those folks here tonight? I always like to thank you, Debbie and Sandy, for being a part of this with us. Commissions, without our commissions, we have a bunch of them here in our town, a dozen of them, and they're very, very important to us. And I really appreciate all the volunteerism that people in this community put towards making the city a better place for all of us. So thank you very much. With that, I'll go on to item number 4, which is public comment and mayor's response period, where I allow 15 minutes for folks to get up and tell us what's on their minds, as long as it's something that is not in front of planning and zoning and or board of adjustments and or something that is on the agenda tonight. So please come up. We'll give you 3 minutes. Give us your name and your address and tell us what's on your mind.
I never sit around and wait on anyone.
Well, that's good. Jan.
So, Mayor, council members, I'm Jan Ollis. I am from Princeton, Idaho. I've lived in this area my entire life, and I want to tell you today that I am running for Latah County Treasurer. And I want to give a little bit of information about who I am and why I feel that I am a good candidate for this position. I've been in the workforce for over 45 years. During those 45 years, I've had the chance to really focus on who I am naturally. Naturally, I am an honest person. I live my life with integrity, credibility, and compassion, and with respect of others. That's one thing my mom really held us to at home, was the respect of others. Raised with good morals and ethics out in Princeton in a little tiny community in the Nazarene Church, good community to grow up in. I'm also a very hardworking person, and I take great pride in every project I am involved in. I learned recently, after going to work for the Moscow Care Center, or Moscow Family Medicine, excuse me, they do a personality review. Who are you naturally? And I really learned some take-home information about who I really am. I'm a maximizer. I look at every way I possibly can to make things better. I am also very strong in interpersonal relationships, trying to make things better with the people that I work with. And I have the utmost respect for others. That came out in that personality review, which didn't surprise me, but it was there and just reinforced it. I take all of my core values that I've mentioned very seriously, and I try to live my life by those core values. They've helped me live or move forward on a career path that has been very rich and given me great personal experience, from frying donuts for Bill 28, almost 29 years ago, to working at the Appaloosa Horse Club and balancing multi-million-dollar budgets as I ran the show department. I was responsible for the national and world championship Appaloosa horse shows. That's where I really started working with finance and really started getting into the financial part of the business world. I was very fortunate to move on and work with Tim Snyder at Good Samaritan, who really helped open up that financial world and helped me to really learn the intricacies of budgets, from creating them to seeing them through the end of the year, knowing where I'm at a moment's notice. So I really do have some good experience. Some of my top skills that I'm going to bring to this position if elected is I'm good with cash receipts. I have experience in accounts payable, accounts receivable, budget management, and I have extraordinary management and leadership skills. My natural talents, including problem solving, communication, and attention to detail, along with time management, will allow me to be a good county treasurer. I've worked for small businesses. I've worked for international corporations. I've worked for profits and nonprofits. I feel I'm very rounded in that area. So I am also a current member and 15 years of being a member of the Moscow Chamber of Commerce Ambassadors. I'm very proud of that. And I'm in my 5th year of serving on the Latah County Fair Board. Very proud of that as well, and where we're headed with the Fair Board. So I thank you for your time today. I will be here afterwards if anyone has any questions of me, and look forward to speaking with everyone. And thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you, Jan. I don't know, over the many, many years I've been here, of course, I'm retired from Safeway now, but it doesn't seem like it was 29 years ago, Jan, but there's been a lot of folks over the years in this entire police region that have worked for me one time or the other. Okay, others that would like to come up and speak?
My name is Chuck Bond,
Hi, Chuck.
626 North Moore Street here in Moscow. I've read and heard numerous statements concerning the 3rd Street Bridge, and it is my impression that it is somewhat of a vocal minority that I have been reading and listening to. And so I would like to give my 2 cents concerning the 3rd Street Bridge. They talk about Moscow having 2 east-west routes, 3rd Street and D Street. D Street dies at Jackson, so I think in my estimation we have 1 east-west route and we need another one. Not 3rd Street, 6th Street, excuse me. In about 2004, I got involved with a piece of property on 3rd Street, and I was down there with the Guilfoys looking at it, and I looked to the east, and I thought, someday there will be a bridge there, and there should be. It did not stop me from purchasing the property. I continually hear almost that the city made a bunch of backdoor deals behind closed doors, kind of stuffed it down the citizens' throats, and I don't believe that. Moscow needs another east-west route. And I think, is anyone here familiar with the Star Trek movies, particularly the first 3? I think it's the second one, The Wrath of Khan, where Spock, in my mind, sums it up very well. When the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, that's what needs to be done. So I would encourage the city to continue with the bridge. I'd like to thank the mayor and the council for indulging me, and live long and prosper.
Well, the bridge is alive and well, and as a city, we're moving forward with it. It's in this budget year, and yes, there's been a lot of discussion over the last several years, and I don't know how many meetings, I guess. I know there was over 17 different encounters, a lot of them right here in this very room. There's never been anything hid on this. It was in the budget workshop. It was in the budget. We talked about it. And yes, there's some folks that don't like it. There's no doubt about it. But it's like anything else. You're going to have people like things. You have folks not like things. But what you do overall is the overall betterment for the entire community. So with that, I'll leave that and go on to the next person that would like to address us. Okay, seeing none come, I will move on to item number 5, which is our Moscow Volunteer Fire Department Fire and Alarm Annual Report. Chief Brian Nickerson is with us. So, Chief, how are you this evening?
Mayor, I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good.
Council, congratulations, Gary. Thought I'd point that out one more time.
Appreciate it.
I just don't know how to work this thing, so. Oh, there it is. All right. So like we do every year, come in and discuss what went on last year, the previous year. And I got a few things in here that we're actually following up with this year too, so because we ordered it last year, and we'll get to that here in just a second. So first thing is the total incidents for 2017. This here is just a breakdown, and I know that the last few years there's been a couple questions about what does service call mean? What does good intent call mean? Well, a slide or two from now, we'll actually go over those, so that way you kind of have a better understanding of it. So You can see 70.85% is our rescue and EMS calls, most of them EMS calls. Rescue, of course, includes motor vehicle accidents and so forth. So fires were at 2.85%. So you can kind of see a percentage. The next slide also tells you the examples. So hazardous condition is a gas leak, power line down, ballast overheated, which we've had quite a few of those with some of the things on campus with some of the issues. Service calls, water problems, smoke removal. We do remove smoke from some folks maybe that burn popcorn or tend to put it on 30 minutes rather than 3 minutes in a microwave. That's been known to happen once or twice. Assist the police, which we're always here to help, Chief Fry. We're always here to help everybody. So unauthorized burning, which we do get quite a few of those. Obviously, when the burn season's not going on. Good intent. We get a few dispatched and canceled in a route. That's meaning either somebody turned out they didn't want us to come, or dispatched maybe to the wrong address, or many different reasons. Smoke scare, we get some of those. People will call, they see smoke in the area, it's from a chimney or something like that. And then if we get a citizen complaint, we track those as well. So that's kind of a breakdown of what those are. And then here's a follow-up to that. You can see last year we did a total of 2,453 calls. Now, keep in mind that everybody here specifically knows that this is all based on all volunteers covering every call. Whether it's the EMS side, whether it's the fire side. There's only 7 of us on staff during the day, during the week, and then the command staff nights and weekends. So all these are covered by a specific volunteer staff, 100%. So you can see rescue calls, EMS calls, 1,700, a little over 1,700 make up that. So it's a little more than last year. I think we got that somewhere. False alarms, the other reason why I'm here. We had 266 false alarm calls last year. We're maintaining the average each year, roughly this amount. We did write 3 tickets. What constitutes you getting a ticket? Well, typically if there's 3 or more false alarms in a 12-month period, we can write a ticket. We won't necessarily. What we try to do is look at why was it a false alarm. If it's burnt popcorn, did the alarm work properly? Yes. Then we don't count that as a false alarm. It's a false alarm in the reporting, but it's not a false alarm in our eyes as far as counting it as, hey, you got 3 and you get a ticket. What we do is look at those things. Now, if we see something, and it's hard to believe that some people go around and pull fire alarm, pull stations and so forth at 2 o'clock in the morning in some of these places around town, those will count towards a ticket because that's malicious in the sense of a false alarm, not the alarm activating as it's designed to do, such as burning something in a microwave or a stove. So we've only issued 3 tickets this year. I think we averaged, 4 or 5 last year. So we don't issue a lot of tickets. We try not to. It's more of an education piece rather than just writing a ticket. But it has got people's attention. So because when we do show up, they ask if they're going to get a ticket. So obviously it gets their attention. How many calls a month do we have? On the right, the grayish color is 2017 compared to 2016 in red. You can see we average close to the same every year. Still haven't figured out why we had less than 100 in July in 2016, but just kind of a really odd year. But we track relatively even all year long. By day of the week, kind of the same. It's kind of hard to project, hey, it's going to be a holiday weekend, or it's going to be this or that. It's going to be summer. It's going to be this day of the week. It's going to be busy. It's busy every day. Friday's up a little bit more than everywhere else, but it shows a trend. And we'll do 3 years next year. Day of the week or time of the day. Now, the one thing I noticed here is it's kind of interesting. From 9 a.m., 9 p.m., it's roughly the highest peaks. So, there's things to look at for trends wise of what we're doing to plan for things in the future. So, inspections. Now that we've hired a full-time fire inspector, we completed 159 inspections in 2017. He started halfway through the year. 78 of those got correction notices issued, which means that, hey, you need to fix these, they're immediate need. Exit signs, egress lights, depending on where they're at, blocked exits and so forth. 45 passed with no comment and 36 passed with a comment. So in other words, you passed it, it's like, hey, you got a light out, fix it, and we'll move on rather than go visit again. So, so we'll see more of this. Our program will actually track all this for us. So it'll be interesting once we get a good year's worth of data to look at. Events. We go to a lot of events. We do over 100 to 150 events a year. That includes fire drills, event standbys, games, fire prevention, ambulance standbys, command standbys at football games, public relations, education, new bill safety fair, all kinds of things. We started about 3 years ago escorting the any high school team, and we'll do it for the university as well, but any high school team that goes to state, we will escort them to the city limits with at least the ladder, the Bear ambulance, my truck, the PD, and we'll escort them to the city limits. If, in fact, one person, like the wrestling, for example, if one of them wins state, we will go meet them at 5 o'clock in the morning to bring them back home, or 2 o'clock, whatever time they get back. So we will escort them back to the school. But you got to win. That's the key. I mean, that's the key. And I tell them before they leave, you got to, whether it's the basketball team that went to state, same thing. You got to win. So you got to be on the positive side to get the escort back home. So, but I tell you what, the community comes out. We actually had a Vista, Tom Hader, actually joined the procession this last time, the basketball group that went. So he called me before, asked if he could participate with his Vista truck. I said absolutely, the more the merrier. So he actually showed up this last time and kind of moseyed on down and out to the city limit. So it's really a cool thing for the kids. Projects, we're working on volunteer strategic planning for the volunteers. They're meeting on average about once a month, every 6 weeks. We completed specifications and ordered a new engine 26, which is arrival in May 2018, which probably is going to be now closer to June, first week of June. We're going to schedule a final inspection probably sometime May the 20th, week of May 20th. Thanks to everybody here for our budget and stuff for the engine, the new SCBAs. We're waiting on one part to come in so we can actually get those all put together. So hopefully by the end of this month we'll have all those in service, and that's roughly $250,000 worth of equipment. It's state of the art. We're the second one in the state of Idaho to have this advanced technology. So we'll be able to monitor air that people are in buildings in our computer in our truck. So we'll be able to actually monitor people, which is a good safety measure. Extrication tool we just bought, just got in service 2 weeks ago on our rescue truck. Recruitment and retention of volunteers and the resident program, that's ongoing. It's every day, and that's a tough battle. But we're making some progress, I think. I got 2 more applications today for our resident program, so hopefully we're going in the right direction. The volunteers for Station 1 is researching with an architect for a possible remodel of Station 1 sometime in the future. Not sure when. They've got 3 people down there, small space, little to no privacy. So they're looking at that. And also this last year, we hired an EMS coordinator, being Pam Rogers, which has already paid for itself. And I hear nothing but positive things from our volunteers that, wow, it's made their job a lot easier. They just want to go, as Gary puts it eloquently, they just want to go run calls. That's what they want to do. They don't want to sit and do paperwork and do all this other stuff. They want to go run calls. So, which now they get to. Training, every year we hold an academy every year. They can do it. Our volunteers can do it online, but we hold an academy every year in the fall for the incoming residents coming in. We do multi-company, multi-agency live fire training, which we also got our new burn boxes, Connex boxes over at Station 2, which we're cutting holes in here hopefully this month. So we'll get more live fire training coming up. We have 5 paramedics that 5 students completed the paramedic program. So they've just got to finish their testing, which is this month. And we also started a command level training, which two of the volunteers already have it done. They had it done in less than 4 weeks, which is pretty awesome since it's 50 hours. It's online, so it's been pretty positive, so. That's all I got for you. Any questions?
I got something for you, Chief. You said our new fire truck will be here sometime in May. Do we have a delivery date for that yet?
No, we're scheduled possibly to go down the week of May 20th to go do a final inspection. So then they'll go through a few things, fix what we find, or finish up a few things that they need to finish up. And then it'll be delivered right after that. So I'm anticipating the first week of June-ish. Not really sure yet. They don't have a date yet. They don't even have a specific date for sure for us to go down.
I'm excited about that new truck coming.
Absolutely. A lot of people are.
And the team escorts, I have had, I don't know how many countless folks in our town comment about the team escorts for the various teams going to state. I think that's a big deal for a community like ours, and it gives those kids some pride, bear pride, and that sort of thing. I think that's a pretty neat thing, and I've heard a lot of positive comments about that, Brian, so.
Yep.
I don't
Good
think
stuff.
I would dwell on if somebody loses, you don't escort them back. I think I kind of could. Just saying, Brian.
Gotta win. Gotta push the envelope.
But it's a good thing that we're doing it. I think it's pretty neat, so.
That's right.
Questions for Brian from council?
Nope, just compliments.
Lots of volunteers, they may. They do all the work.
I was just curious, what prompts an inspection?
I'm sorry?
What prompts an inspection from
Well,
you
we
all?
do alcohol inspections for Lori to issue those. Anything that serves alcohol, hood systems, which cooking devices, those type of businesses. We do fraternities, sororities twice a year over on campus. The higher hazard type facilities. But we're required to do them for anybody that sells alcohol.
Grocery
In the
stores.
city, yeah. And we're going to keep expanding, but once we get some better data, and Dan's just taken off running, Dan Ellenwood. He's phenomenal, and he's done amazing things so far, and there's no end to it. A computer program that we're using, he's taken run with that, so it's made life a lot easier. And now he does it all it's all paperless for the most part.
Great.
So he has an iPad, does it right there in the field, gives it to him right away. So yeah, we're going to do more and more, hopefully. So
It's amazing how consistent the calls are every day. Friday's blinked up a little bit, but all those other ones are like 335 to 364, right? And I mean, that's amazing.
we average
really.
6.6, 6.7 a day,
Yeah.
roughly. So
Good is.
Brandy?
Do you have any theory about why overall the number of calls is increased? Is that pretty standard year to year?
it is standard. Yeah, I mean, you can expect, 3 to 5% every year, roughly, give or take. I mean, it really depends. I mean, everybody around here, some of my counterparts, even they're up to, at least to a degree. So it's a standard thing. It's just the way it is. I don't know. Nobody can really say why. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chief, for that excellent annual report.
No
And
problem.
we will move on to item number 6, which is the noise ordinance report by our Chief of Police, James Fry. So, welcome, Chief Fry.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. Thank you for letting me again talk to you reference to our noise ordinance. So I would like to pass something out to you all real quick. All that this is a
Thank you.
same copy of the slide, but it also talks about the ordinances that we utilize when we issue citations or warnings and what our guideline is for that. Chief? So as you can see, this, in 2017, we had approximately 406 noise complaints, and we issued 21 citations, using the different various codes. So far, out of those 21, 10 have pled guilty and 8 were dismissed. 2 were amended and 1's still pending at this time. So it's just working through the process of those complaints. On this next chart here, it shows the difference between all the years. As you can see, our noise complaints have dropped. This last year, we had 406, as I stated. And as you notice that the citation number went up, so I went back and actually did a review of that because I figured that might be a little concerning to you, because in the past, typically we try to educate first and then we'll issue a citation or make an arrest. So I wanted you to be aware of why those went up. Out of those 21, 7 citations were given to individuals who had been contacted at least twice within a 2-day period. So we were starting to go back, so a citation was issued. 8 of those actually we made arrests on, and in those 8 that we made arrests on, they were due to some form of a violent nature, maybe a domestic that wasn't completely physical, but it was still enough that people called, so we took them on that. And then 6 of the citations were actually due to individuals being contacted 4 or more times in a 2-year period. And one of those individuals was actually contacted 62 times out of a 2-year period. So we'd had contact many times, and we decided, obviously, that it was time to address it in another manner. Education wasn't working, and we'd been more than fair enough, I think, during those times. So that shows, as I stated, it shows that there's a drop in our actual complaints, but the numbers are up a little bit on our citations. But it's not because we're not still educating. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, back in 2008, when we revised this ordinance, I was on a council at that time, and I can remember when we brought this up, my gosh, we had people worried about our officers being heavily handed in this, and as you can see, the noise complaints have gone down, down, down consistently for a decade, and the reason for that is because we put something in place, because originally before this, there was these 48-hour notices that we had to have and all kinds of incredibly dumb things. And so sometimes our officers just simply have to tell people to behave themselves, turn the noise down, and most of them comply with that. You can tell that by the numbers. You only had 21 citations out of 406. I think that's pretty good. And whenever, the whole idea about that noise ordinance thing too is that if you had repeat offenders of it, yeah, they deserve a citation. Yeah, because they're not getting it, and the education part of it, like you said, Chief's not working, so something else has to happen, so. Comments for Chief Fry?
So, Chief, there's 406 complaints, and the one guy accounted for 15% of that himself. 60.
Yeah, and there's some other things going on with that individual that we're dealing with as well. So we're trying to use a little compassion there and a little bit of education along the way, and at some point you do even reach with those you're trying to be compassionate with, that you have to take other steps to take care of the problem.
Well, you take that into consideration, there's
Yeah.
slightly over 300 now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you for the annual report. We will move on. Thank you for everybody's hard work on that. Okay, item number 7 is Indian Hills Trading Company Parkland Dedication Property Exchange Request. Dwight Curtis has got this tonight. Hi, Dwight. How you doing this evening?
Good evening. And all those calls, those were not to my house. I just clear on that. Not this year, anyway. Okay, I know we're here somewhere. There we go. Okay. All right, well, thank you again for having me. We were presented with an opportunity that I thought that we should jump on, and so we're bringing this to you tonight to try to get this to happen. Sometime back, last fall, we were approached with the idea of possibly exchanging some property from some existing parkland dedication that we had for some other property. And basically, just the bottom line to it is the Indian Hills Trading Company is requesting to exchange a 1.74 acre parkland dedication for a 4.09 acre parcel. And just to show you where we're at, this is the Grove, the John Deere tractor company down here, Highway 95. That's where the new property would be. Over here you can see where the existing property is. And that's right about their property line as well. And they have their property going to the west from there. A little closer view of that, the Grove down in the bottom, the new parcel that we're looking for in the green, and the old parcel or the existing parcel over here in the purple. Basically, like I said, we're looking to dedicate Tract A, which is the 4.9, or having the Indian Hills Trading Company, dedicate that 4.09 to the city, and our 1.74 we would dedicate back to Indian Hills Trading Company. And this, through this exchange, it would satisfy all the requirements for the Indian Hills 8th edition, which is where that 1.74 acres came from, as well as the approximately 18.6 acres of remaining unplatted property. And if this is approved, 60 days from final approval by the council, this would go into effect. Now, the reason for the request is, well, the terrain, it's not level. And it's just in such a manner that in order to get their to have their roads fit into a subdivision, they needed this property. And I mean, we looked this over quite extensively. The exchange is supported by the Parks and Rec Department staff. It's supported by the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Pathways Commission, and the Tree Commission. And the intended development of the new parkland would be to establish an edible forest type park. And this idea came from one of our Tree Commission members, David Griffith. And they intended originally to put different kinds of nut trees, fruit trees, whatever, along the pathways. And then an opportunity just sort of fell into our laps. Timing was, you couldn't have timed this better. So, general information, this new parkland, the park itself would be unique. Edible forest. If you think about that, fruit trees, nut trees, herbs, all kinds of things can be grown here. Just think of an arboretum, but that'll provide you food. There's long-term and short-term planning that would need to be done with this. If you think about a walnut tree, for example, that can live over 100 years, most of us, maybe with the exception of Gary, will be gone by then. And so, you know, we're talking long-term, so what do you do in the short term? So you have a lot of fruit trees that don't last that long. So we'll have the experts work on the planning of this. There was a question of whether other properties were considered for the edible forest. As far as a park concept, there were not. Like I said, the Tree Commission was looking to work along the pathways. And I'm assuming that they probably still will. It doesn't mean we have to only have this edible park in a park. They could still do that along the pathways as well. But the advantage of this park for an edible forest, number one is, well, I mean, it's the size. I mean, it's considerably larger. And like I said, it's a unique park. You would have a unique park experience. And of course, we're talking fruits, nuts, berries, herbs, all kinds of things of that nature. The terrain is unique. It is not level. When I first was told about this opportunity, was kind of phrased as, do you want a sledding hill? And I kind of laughed about it at first, but then I started putting together what I had learned at one of the tree commission meetings about the edible forest. And this property has a southwest and west slope to it, and it is perfect for this kind of a use. And like I said, it's unique. So it seemed worthwhile to pursue. There's also actually quite a bit of room for parking. It'd be roadside parking using 20-foot parking spaces. There's about 59 spaces along that area. So, like any park, you can have a lot more parking than what you, or a lot more need for parking than what you might originally have. The neighboring property development, right now there is no plat that goes east from this, but all of these things, just as a normal course of development, goes through the planning process, through the planning and zoning, through the staff, and so there's a orderly progression of development as any subdivision is put in. This particular kind of a park is also, I use just the term grant-worthy. It's green. Things that are green are grant-worthy right now. That's the big thing. Environmental projects, education, this thing's really ripe for grants. There was also a question of water sewer access, and I'll show you this. The red dots are, those are fire hydrants, but we've got water at the top, and right now we have water at the bottom. Through discussions with our Public Works Director, there might be a need to place a water booster station, if I've got that term right, in this, and it would likely be somewhere right in here where they would actually dig out part of the hillside and put it in there to give us as much room as we can for the park. But it also, it's in some ways works out pretty good because like I said, this is not flat land, and that would help with the water pressure that we would need. We would actually have the pump station right there. And sewer, a little more problematic. We do have sewer up on top. There's sewer that I believe stops right here, and there will be sewer going partway up this street here. Well, that's actually right away, but that will have, I think he said it was a high pressurized system. We would not be able to access that. So for sewer, should we ever put in a hardened restroom facility, we would either have to get an easement to access down to the highway, or possibly a septic, but I'm guessing that's probably not going to work in this case. But likely where we would end up with a facility of this nature would be kind of your ADA porta potty like we have at Berman Creekside. You put a nice cover over it, and it fits right in. And then you save yourself a fortune on sewer expenses as well, unless something else happens in here that would give us better access down the road. This particular kind of park, what I'm envisioning is that it's low maintenance. Mentioned before, it's the slope, the facing of the west-southwest. The forest itself would be planned and maintained by volunteers. We have several groups here in Moscow, as well as the university, that would just jump on this. Drip line irrigation, I don't really foresee anything here that would take a regular sprinkler irrigation. Pesticide-free, I think this would be a perfect place to try to work with that concept. Sustainable Environment Commission would be on board with this, I think. Through the slopes on this, once it's developed, we would have vistas, envision picnic tables, benches, things like that. Just since the administrative committee last week, we had somebody send me a note and said, why could you not have an integrated type of a park where you might still be able to have a small tot lot down toward the bottom. And so as we would go through the actual planning process to put this all together, things like that would be brought into the equation and considered. We've always envisioned with this a shelter, basically just a park shelter, but when you think about fruits and vegetables, nuts, things like that, where you would have classes and things, you would need a shelter to do some of that. Right here you have a cider pressing class, instructors talking about the actual trees and the fruits. The pathway to be ADA would be paved. Park oversight, I would envision the tree commission having oversight of that. They would likely have a subcommittee that would, basically be geared just straight for this, strictly for this particular kind of park. STEM, the big thing in the schools, perfect environment for such a thing. The new Palouse Prairie Charter School will just be down the road. Matter of fact, that's part of the preliminary plat, where it's not where the original property is, but it's of the parkland that we have now, but it's right over next to that. And of course, kiosks, information. There's a gazillion things that could be done here, and we're pretty excited about it. Here's that property. Now, I'm just going to tell you, this picture really doesn't do it justice. When you walk out there, I mean, it looks a lot steeper. But this is farm ground. Combines, and granted we use levelers here, but this is farmed land. So it's not all that steep. Another view, this property right here is part of it. It's already planted with trees, and we likely, there might be some more trees put in there, but likely that would remain fairly close to what it is now. But it's a good segue into the park from that direction. Right where the vehicle is a curb cut, so there would be access to get in right there. My vision anyway at the moment would be right in here would be where that booster station would be. So it would be out of our way and still be accessible for our water department. And trees are our best antiques. Just remember, in 100 years, when those walnut trees are still growing over there and we're long gone, our grandchildren will be out there and talking to their kids about our trees. And with that, tonight's recommendation is for the City Council approval of the Parkland Exchange and Dedication Agreement between Indian Hills Trading Company and the City of Moscow regarding the parkland for Indian Hills 8th subdivision and the remaining adjacent unplatted Indian Hills Trading Company property. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay, Dwight. Even though this isn't a public hearing, I'm going to ask for public comment if there's anybody out there that would like to speak. But before I do that, comments from the council. This was on an administrative committee.
Yes, sir.
Gina?
Dwight, will you show us, please, the parking again? I lost it from when you showed me earlier, and I wanted you to walk us all through it. It's along the side there,
Yes.
Right on there.
and that's where the 58 or however
Well,
many
it's on this
spaces
side,
are.
and there's some on the
And
other
across the
side
side.
as
Okay.
well.
Awesome. Okay. Art, you had some questions at the meeting the other day. Did you
Yeah.
get those answered?
Yeah, I did. So really good job on getting those questions answered that I had at the first hearing. And in the meanwhile, I haven't heard any negative comments about the swap going on. One item that just came to mind relative to the long-term park planning and thought going to it is you got an edible forest here. And edible means things are going to show up to eat. And so there's mice, and there's rats, and there's
Squirrels.
skunks, and there's squirrels. And then with all of that, you've got the other critters that eat the edible critters that are there eating the edible forest. And pretty soon you've got a whole little ecosystem of potentially conflicting wildlife with nearby residents. The lovely aroma of skunk wafting up the hill to Indian Hills. So is the Parks Commission ready to take that one on to try to keep the lid on all of that?
Well, the subcommittee or the planning committee that we'll put together with this, we would certainly have the people that would be knowledgeable enough on how to deal with this. If you think about it, Moscow itself is already an edible forest. So
My nose tells me so at times.
yes, but the majority likely of the skunk aromas are probably from the cars hitting them or dogs. So I think the city already has that issue that we're dealing with. In this case, yeah, it would be more concentrated, but I think that I would believe that we have the expertise in the community that can help us work through those obstacles. There are a lot of things that have to be considered with this. I really hate this slide, but I'm going to show you just because it puts a little bit into perspective. Okay, I was not drinking. I just couldn't hold that little line right. But the Pathways Commission said that people will make their own trail to get to the bottom as quickly as they can, or a shortcut, basically. So we're going to have to deal with that. We do have winters here, even in April. And we'll have issues, with that sort of thing. So a lot of things have to be covered here. We want to go pesticide-free. That's not something that Moscow Parks and Rec has dealt with before. We're working with the Sustainable Environment Commission on how to do that. We're still waiting to have more discussions, but we were hoping to have a park as a prototype to work this out in. I don't know that we'll get to this quickly enough, development-wise, to do that, so we'll probably pick another park. So we might have some experience with that prior to getting to this. And then just the rules. Do you close? Are we going to put lights in there? I mean, just a lot of things. And one of the big topics would be, how do you keep one person or one group of people going in and cleaning out the edible forest? And so we have a lot of work to do on that part. It just didn't seem really logical to go into that much detail until we knew whether or not we had property to do it on.
Some of those problems you won't even know about until after the thing is done.
Yes.
I mean, things will come up, it's like, oh, well, that will spring up.
Sure. And there are other edible forests throughout the United States, and so it's not like we're having to start completely from scratch. We'll try to take advantage of others, their experiences, and try to work this out. This property was offered at one time, not the entire part, but a lot of that steep part originally when the Grove was originally going through the preliminary plat. At that time, this was not on our agenda as far as that kind of a park. It wouldn't have worked, I don't think, as your regular kind of park. But like I said, timing-wise, I just happened, Dave was sick, so I took a tree commission meeting, and they started talking about edible forest, and then a couple days later, then I get a call that said, hey, how about this piece of property? And I don't know, it just like, boom, it was huge, and I think just this is a good deal.
Other questions for Jim?
Dwight, the other places that have edible forests, I'm in favor of this transaction, but in terms of monitoring the harvest of the edibles that grow there, how do people deal with that so that when you have a higher valued crop, say there's a bunch of blueberries there, somebody doesn't go harvest all the blueberries and leave none for someone else? How do you police that in the other communities?
Well, like I was saying earlier with that, we don't know those answers yet. We haven't planned that far, and we didn't even have the property yet. But we definitely will, because I think that is a big possibility. It's more of a likelihood that something like that would happen without something to work it. I just don't know. But
you haven't talked to anybody else, another community that has one of these and seen the issues that come up already? And
I have not talked to them, no. I've looked at their websites. There's a new one in Seattle area, and I just haven't gotten that far with the planning part. And I'm sure that's just one of a multitude of things that we'll have to look at. And I mentioned earlier about the near-term planning and the long-term planning. A walnut tree you plant, and I don't know how many years before it starts producing some fruit, but it'll be a lot more years than a blueberry plant. And or maybe they'll put some ground cover that would be edible, strawberries, things like that. Just as a little side note, in the last position that I had in Kansas City, we had a pathway that was just like Paradise Path, where it ran along a creek side. Well, this was Kansas City area, a little more humid. Things grow a little differently there than they do here. But Home Depot donated a truckload of all these old plants that they didn't get sold before the frost came. And a lot of them were grapes and blackberries and some plants that you really don't want to plant. But our public works guys planted a bunch of these just various places along that creek. And it was like a jungle in there to start with. Now you have wild grapes 30 feet up in the air and bur oak trees. And it's just a big place for people to take pictures of all the birds and things like that. This is downtown, deep downtown type of Kansas City area, so it's not like the wilds, but you wouldn't know it going through there. And so, I don't know. It was just exciting to see that happen over the years, and it's still there, and I hope they didn't plant the blackberries, but I envisioned this having a lot of those opportunities as well.
Brandy.
I'm glad you brought that slide up, actually. So
I'm going to burn that slide after this meeting.
I won't hold you to that exact yellow line, but the portion to the south and east of the red there, do you envision that having any utility, that whole skinny, steep part?
Well, probably not. These lines that you see here, those are, help me out with terminology, Bill.
Contour lines?
Contour line.
No, they're not contour. They hold the mountainside in place.
Retaining walls?
Retaining walls, yes, I'm sorry. And so we likely won't mess a lot with that area. It's possible we could have some little walking areas to go through it, but as far as actually digging and things like that, we probably won't. Talking to Les McDonald earlier today, probably the best we'll be able to do as far as anything significant would be right in here. And if it's possible, that's where we would likely have a water booster station. But at the same time, I'll go back to what I'd said earlier. We haven't done all the planning for this of what kind of plants would go there. So there could be more that we could do with that and still maintain that hillside. I don't want to create something that's also a fire hazard that'll rush up toward the houses up there. So
Could it be possible that if we did the exchange, we don't want responsibility for that part?
well,
cut that part off?
matter of fact, that's why that line is there. When I originally put this together, I really wasn't interested in that property. I just saw issues. But running it through the 3 different commissions, talking it over with other staff and some arborist type folks. Unless you actually went in to do some changing of what's there, it's a nice piece of property. It doesn't hurt us any, and it also protects the vision as you go into the park from the east. And it's possible that along, I don't know how thick those are, but I mean they're probably 2 feet maybe, these wide, these retaining walls. It could be possible that there's a pathway that it might not be ADA accessible, but a walkable pathway that could link down here as well.
Well, that's where you're, all along that roadway, you're gonna be parking, all the way up there, and even some on the other side. So some type of a path from that end of that snout up would make sense.
Yeah, and this would be our primary entryway that would go into the booster station. Up in here would likely be where the shelter would be, restroom facility, and then the pathways. And I have no idea at this moment how those would really go.
Well, well, you know, Dwight, I think you could do all of what is till you're blue in the face. But
Yes.
what we're really trying to figure out is, do we want to do this land swamp, not all the intricacies of what may or may not happen, because that's just kind of guessing right now, some of that anyway. So I don't think we need to go any more detailed on that. I think you've done a great job at telling us. What I would like to hear from is public. If we got anybody out there from the public that come up and speak, please come on up and give us your name and address, and we'll give you 3 minutes and tell us what your thoughts are.
Good evening, Shelley Bennett, 2279 Mosier Street, or Mosier, Street. I call it Court, wherever I live, Moscow. I wanted to just give you an update because I got the information about the consideration about the sewer. And so I talked to the engineer that did the design for this project, and he said he believed he stubbed a conduit of some sort across so that you wouldn't have to dig up the street to put the sewer in over there. So he believes that something might be done so that the sewer could come more readily. The sanitary sewer is in Myrtle, and when we sell those lots, that'll get put in and that street will get finished, and that's the long distance route to get the sewer now. If you were to want to put a bathroom in, Jack Hammond, the engineer for the original project, said he believes he stubbed something in. So I just wanted to make sure you had that information. And then Art, the moose live in my yard, and I live pretty far in town now. So there's a lot of wildlife in Moscow everywhere. The raccoons, the skunks, the people come and get them out of my neighborhood on a regular basis. So we have that creek that runs through town that brings the wildlife in. So we like the wildlife. I don't think that would hurt this. But I wanted to let you know from the Indian Hills Trading Company standpoint, because that's who I represent. They came up with the idea originally to give you that hill, and then they came back and said, why don't we just offer them the whole 4 acres in lieu of that 1.74 acres so that they could do something with it. So that is what's in front of you to decide on. If there's any questions about what logistics you need, let me know. I can get Jack on the phone.
Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you very much.
And you are right, we have critters all over our town.
Victoria Seaver, 121 North Lily, Moscow. So I am aware of some of this and had some thoughts, and I've been scratching all over here from the notes I heard tonight. I'm in favor of the park exchange. And a friend and I went and looked at it last Friday, and then last Wednesday, I walked through the U of I Old Arboretum on campus as a kind of comparison. That day, there was in the time that I went through there was another senior citizen, 3 students who went through. There was a student who sat in the amphitheater with his iPhone forever. I sat at the benches that were there for a good while. And that was a brisk, breezy, sun-dappled really serene kind of time in the Arboretum. And as a student and as a worker, when I worked on campus, I spent a lot of time in that Arboretum, occasionally go back there. Now I'm going to go more often. I've forgotten how wonderful it is. So that was a comparison for me. The amphitheater that's at the old Arboretum, that would be a nice ideal. I hadn't heard the shed ideal, which would be the same kind of ideal, having a place to sit and to take a moment, and as Dwight said, a great place to have kids come and learn about things, field trip, come learn about pollinators, come learn about trees, come learn about the topography of the Palouse you can see right across the hill, all kinds of things. And all parks do not have to be playgrounds. We need different kinds of parks. And kids can run through the forest with their imagination and have a great time. It might be feasible to consider a tot lot at the bottom. These guys can work that out later. Some other points that I wanted to bring up is that you had 3 commissions support this, and I would mention that the recent commission survey, the Parks and Rec, got nothing but favorable comments for what they're doing, so I have a lot of faith in them. In terms of pesticide-free, it's the first time I've heard it here for this, and I can assure you the Sustainable Environment Commission that I am on would be thrilled. There were some thoughts about the homes being above, whether they could get down that hill. It's steep. Of course, I'm surprised there's homes there, but you can build them there. And I looked at that, and we looked at Alice Street, which is further down, and that is also a very straight, very steep street. And I think that that's on par of making a pathway from the top of the Indian Hills Drive that you would not be straight down. It would be a more angled path. And if you can do Alice Street, you can do the park. If you don't want to, then go on Southview Avenue. And Southview is going to be your main access if you don't want to take a hill for whether it's the park is here or whether the park goes into the possible subdivision to the east. You may have some availability for parkland further east when further development is done on the Thompson property or through the Paradise Prairie School. That's something that can be looked into. That's kind of aside from having this. The exchange is a different but a positive aspect for the developments in the area that are already there or could go in. And it would draw the broader Moscow community, and I think it would be a great view coming down the highway, coming to Moscow. There's this sustainable, beautiful park up on the hillside, and I think that's a great thing to have for our city to welcome to Moscow. So I like the park idea.
Thank you, Victoria. Are there others out there that would like to speak? Okay, well, let's turn it back over here to council. What do we want to do, everybody?
I have just a couple things
Brandy?
I'd like to just kind of discuss amongst us. Is now the, okay. So I would like, with all the different options, ideas about the Tot Park and parking up on Indian Hills and hours and all these things and lights, can we be sure that there will be some neighborhood public process to help with to find out what the people there want to be incorporated into this? And
When we go through the park planning process, we absolutely, this is parkland dedication, and we absolutely would bring in the public. We've gone through 4 of these in the last few years, not exactly this kind, but brought in the public, advertised it. Those that are fairly local to the property, we give direct mailings to invite. That's what it's all about, is what the public wants.
thank you. And I'm just still not sure if there's an advantage to the city having that part that's really difficult. I mean, even, I know what you were saying about there maybe being a path along Southview there, along that skinny little piece, but it's so steep. I mean, if that part isn't really usable for us, do we want to have the responsibility of those retaining walls? And is there an option to just say, we'll do the exchange, but we don't want that part?
Well, what's everybody else think?
Well, was going to say that despite potential perception of my questioning, it was mostly just to determine whether this swap is really in the best interest of the city or not. And as you know, Dwight, I am a great fan of non-traditional parks. And so I think that having the entirety in a non-traditional park sense, availing people of different experiences for recreation and leisure, the swap does, in my mind, make sense, and I think it's quite a good idea, especially with the idea of the edible forest included. So I think the variety of topography and vegetation that's possible there, you could have a continuation of a non-edible forest across that steeper section through there that could also serve as an educational focus point for other folks. So to my mind, I think it's a good idea to go forth and do the swap out.
Can you go back to your squiggles again?
I think I deleted it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, nice try.
Come on, we know that's not true. Dwight's got to be, there you
There it
go.
is.
Because is it correct that the part in the slide that you just showed us with the trees on it is just the little non-green part to the north and west of the red line, between the yellow and the red dots?
On the
So
bottoms.
what you can see there is
Yeah,
this
that's where it
area.
is.
And there, it is kind of a bend right there, so you couldn't see the whole thing, but
Okay.
what you could see is right there. I don't know when this picture was taken. This was, off of Google Earth. So you can see the trees are pretty small in this. They're considerably larger now. And I don't know, just getting back to your question of whether it would be worth it. Like I said, that's why I had that original red line. My first thought were concerns, but listening to various people on this, I don't know. I just think I think it's worthwhile. It also gives us some control of what's happening along there as well.
And the discussions amongst all the commissions, they were in favor of keeping that little snout
Yes.
part that comes out
Yes.
to the east.
And I specifically brought that up,
Okay.
just to,
Okay.
I was kind of the lone voice on that one.
We don't have any more discussion. I, Your Honor, would like to move that we approve the Parkland Exchange and Dedication Agreement between Indian Hills Trading Company LLC and the City of Moscow regarding parkland for the Indian Hills 8th Edition subdivision and the remaining adjacent unplatted Indian Hills Trading Company property.
Second.
Okay, well, we have a motion by Gina and a second by Ann to approve the Parkland Exchange Dedication Agreement between Indian Hills Trading Company LLC and the City of Moscow regarding the parkland for Indian Hills 8th Edition subdivision and remaining adjacent unplotted Indian Hills Trading Company property. Further discussion with anybody?
I do have
Brandy?
one question. If this passes, and I know in the future, coming to city council is the rezone, how does the timing work if there's a stumbling block there and we've already approved the Parkland Exchange?
Gary, you want to address that, please?
So you're asking how it affects the plat?
Well, I mean, I know that the rezone, one of the conditions was that this Parkland Exchange happens.
Exactly.
What if the Parkland Exchange happens and then the council doesn't approve the rezone?
Parkland exchange has already happened. It doesn't go back. You could make a condition upon that, but then you have a condition on a condition. I would not recommend that.
Okay.
Other discussion? I'll start the roll with Jim.
Aye.
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 Okay, we'll move forward with thank you, Dwight, for the
Thank you.
presentation. Okay, we will move on to item number 8, which is Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal District Main Street Expansion Eligibility Study. Bill Belknap, you have the podium. Sir, how are you tonight, Bill?
I'm doing well, Your Honor. Just one moment here.
You should be happy this gun's down there.
Go there.
God, we've all had, geez, I didn't use the, man, we should be all there, but it hasn't been bad last few.
farm guys over the hill to the west take care of that.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought I'd start off with a little bit of background on this individual subject to help the council understand where this originated from. Within the city's adopted 2015 strategic plan, the council identified the deteriorating public infrastructure within downtown as a major challenge area. And those elements were, as the city went through the development of the 2015 strategic plan, it identified a number of challenges, both internal and external to the city, but it did identify a limited number of those as being what was termed in that plan a major challenge area. And that was an element or a specific challenge the city was facing that was more significant and definitely more potentially impactful to the community. After the adoption of that strategic plan in 2015, the council conducted 2 joint meetings with the Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors or Board of Commissioners. And in that discussion, in those joint meetings, the discussion of the expansion of the Legacy Crossing District to include Main Street was identified as a priority for the agency to pursue. Amending the boundary to expand and include that portion of Main Street in the downtown area would provide the opportunity for the agency to partner with the City of Moscow on future downtown streetscape and public infrastructure improvements. The process of either creating or amending an urban renewal district includes a number of sequential steps. The first of those is the completion of an eligibility study is what we're here this evening to discuss. As I mentioned, that formation process starts off with an eligibility study, and typically the urban renewal agency, oftentimes responding to the direction or request of City Council, will complete the eligibility study for an area that the city is considering for an urban renewal project. Once that eligibility study is complete, it would then be transmitted to the City Council, passed by resolution of the board of the Urban Renewal Agency, then passed on for the council's consideration. The council then considers the eligibility study, and if the council concurs that the area meets the definition of a deteriorating area and is appropriate for an urban renewal project, the council would approve the study and authorize the creation of the district plan. The agency then prepares the district plan, and when it's complete, approves the transmittal of that plan to the City Council by resolution of the agency for the council's consideration. Once the council receives a plan or proposed amendment from the Urban Renewal Agency, the City Council refers it to the city's Planning and Zoning Commission, and the commission is charged with reviewing the proposed plan or amendment for conformance with the city's adopted comprehensive plan. Once the council has received that recommendation, the City Council would consider the plan during a public hearing, and if approved, would approve it by ordinance, which formally creates the district and any associated tax revenue allocation area that may be associated within the project. So as I mentioned, this evening, we are here to looking at the very early stages of that process for amending Legacy with the eligibility study. The study is really intended to assess the project area to determine if conditions exist that would indicate the area is a deteriorated or deteriorating area. And those are two different definitions, but they're companion definitions in state statute, and they're included in the appendix of the eligibility study that you have this evening. Within those definitions, there are 10 specific criteria that are identified underneath Idaho Code, which assess the condition of both public and site improvements, structures, as well as other impediments to development. Maybe it's street layout or lot configurations or configurations of ownership that impedes the development and redevelopment of a specific area. As I mentioned before, the purpose is to determine whether the area meets the definition of a deteriorating or deteriorating area, and thus an urban renewal project is appropriate for that specific location within the community. So those 10 criteria start off with a substantial number of deteriorating or deteriorated structures, predominance of defective or inadequate street layout, a faulty lot layout in relation to size, adequacy, accessibility, or usefulness, insanitary or unsafe conditions, deterioration of site or other improvements, diversity of ownership, a tax or special assessment delinquencies that exceed the fair value of the land that may be inhibiting development of an area, defective or unusual conditions of title, existence of conditions which endanger life or property by fire or by other causes, or the final is really any combination of the foregoing 9 criteria. Now, this is really not a new eligibility study. This is an update to an eligibility study that was completed in 2007, but as that is over 10 years in age, we felt that it was appropriate and necessary for the agency to update that work. So the initial study was presented to the Urban Renewal Agency on August 7th, 2007. That was completed by Harlan Mann. And at that point in time, it was a much larger area that was under consideration. There were two areas that were identified within the eligibility study, Area A, which is shaded in blue, and then the kind of pink color Area B. This map indicates, and there's a key there that you can't see or can't read at that scale, but identified locations where those 10 different criteria conditions were present. That, as I mentioned before, that was completed in 2007, so it has been over 10 years since that was completed. It did conclude that both Area A and Area B had characteristics that indicated that it was a deteriorating area and eligible for an urban renewal project. But this evening, we're just talking about a small, thin slice of Area B. Ultimately, when the district was formed in 2008, the boundary largely followed the Area A outline. And so that portion of Main Street that exists, well, all of Main Street, is just outside the urban renewal district boundary. That boundary runs just down the alley that is located on the west side of Main Street. So really what we're focusing on this evening is an update to this eligibility study that just covers this particular narrow slice of the downtown core. So we'll walk through those individual criteria, the first of which, as I mentioned, was substantial number of deteriorated or deteriorating structures. As noted in the 2007 study, there have been a number of buildings that have undergone renovation and improvements, but there still remain many that have had deferred maintenance and limited investment in the time period. We did conduct an assessment of the exterior appearance of those structures to identify whether any visible signs of private structure improvement or deterioration. The assessment indicated that over 17% of the structures within the assessment area contained one or more signs of deterioration, both either of the building or of site improvements on the site. And over 40% of the building facades were deemed to be outdated and not consistent with the National Historic District designation of the study area. A predominance of defective or inadequate street layout is criteria number 2. Generally, the street layout is consistent with what you would see for a small urban area. Main Street traverses the north-south. Generally, the street layout is considered to be consistent and provides adequate access and circulation and is not to be considered defective or inadequate. The faulty lot layout or relation of size, adequacy, access, or usefulness. Again, within the study area, the lots vary widely in size. All the lots that are studied as part of this eligibility study were located on the west side of Main Street, so they are generally oriented in the east-west orientation, fronting on Main Street with access to the alley to the west. Generally, lot layout is consistent with what you expect in a historical downtown area. It does not contribute to the study area being a deteriorating or deteriorated area. When looking at insanitary or unsafe conditions, there are some capacity issues within the sanitary sewer main that exists in 6th Street between Main and Jackson. It's mostly due to pipe size and slope, but it does have some surcharging that happens in some manholes within that segment that is limiting sewer service and presents a long-term maintenance issue and sanitary condition problems within that particular area. There also are virtually no ADA compliant crosswalks within this area. As you know, many of the crosswalks that exist in downtown were installed as part of the 1981 LID with exposed concrete aggregate and do not have the tactile warning strips or meet grade requirements for current ADA standards. And so those do present safety hazards to those with sight impairments or mobility impairments within the downtown area. There are also a number of differential either settlement or lifting of sidewalks that present tripping hazards throughout the core, and those also present safety hazards to pedestrians and those with limited mobility. And there's also a fairly significant substandard lighting that exists in the downtown core. Those can both reduce public safety, either perceived or real, and visibility of pedestrians that traverse the area in periods of low lighting. The Moscow Public Works Department conducted a public lighting study of the study area and indicated that lighting levels are adequate really in the immediate proximity of the existing light fixtures, but many of those fixtures are either spaced too far apart or having obstructions and competing with trees up in the tree canopy. That light levels dropped as low as 1/10 of a foot candle in between those light fixtures. That represents about 6.5% to 8.5% of recommended lighting levels, so much below what we'd like to see for both street lighting as well as sidewalk lighting in the downtown area. So there is a large variability in lighting with very bright spots as well as very dark spots between those fixtures, which creates difficulty for the human eye to adjust as both pedestrians and motorists traverse the corridor. This was just an example. This was included in the appendix of the eligibility study, but again, you can see the light areas that are shown by, this is really starting at the north end of Main Street and then heading south. Street center line here and sidewalks on either side, and curb lines in between. So you can see the lighting levels where it was well below standard or those substantially below standard, and then the yellow areas indicate where lighting was adequate. The deterioration of sight or other improvements is really the predominant condition that was identified during both the 2007 study and this update. Throughout the study area, there are significant curb and sidewalk deficiencies and roadway deterioration that was observed. Other than some limited sidewalk reconstruction, much of the concrete is fairly old, cracking, displaced, uneven, or otherwise damaged in some way. As I mentioned before, there is significant differential lifting and settling that has occurred that create displacements in excess of a ½ inch that is considered to be an ADA non-compliant condition when that occurs. And street curbing is in a similar condition. Many areas it's missing, broken, deteriorating after almost 40 years of maintenance and snow plowing and utilization through the downtown area. In many areas, it's also too low to adequately control drainage because of street overlays that have occurred over time. As I mentioned, none of the pedestrian ramps within the study area are compliant with current ADA standards. As I mentioned, the downtown revitalization project that was done in 1980 and 81, it's also resulted in installation of many of the benches, planters, garbage trash receptacles along Main Street, and many of those are in very poor and deteriorating condition as well. There have been some street surface maintenance projects that have occurred. Main Street received the most of it between 6th and up, I think, to about 2nd Street. But sections from 6th Street to 7th and 7th to 8th have a very poor asphalt condition rating of 40 or below in those segments. And there's also a portion of 4th Street east of Friendship Square as well that has a fairly low condition rating. This is a detailed map that's also included in the study that shows the areas of deficient infrastructure that were identified during that study. So the red dots identify deteriorating curbing, the blue dots indicate road deterioration, yellow is non-compliant ADA drops. So you can see that there's a fairly extensive pattern of deterioration throughout the study area. And these are just a few photographs kind of showing the condition of that hardscape, as I mentioned. Missing curb, cracking, deteriorated curbing, sidewalks, non-compliant drops as well throughout the downtown area. So it is definitely showing its age at this point, 40 years after that major renovation work downtown. Diversity of ownership, that was one. It is diverse in the downtown core, but that was not identified as something that is contributing to inhibiting growth or development in the area. Tax or special assessment delinquencies, there were none that were identified on record that we were aware of, so that does not appear to be an issue in the area. Or defective or unusual conditions of title. There was no record of any defective or unusual title that would contribute to a deteriorating area. Existence of conditions would endanger life or property by fire or other causes. Is noted in the study if predicted outcomes of climate change are realized and we have more frequent intense rainfall events, we will anticipate seeing increased stormwater events that would be impacting the study area. Even under current storm events, the main storm line main that extends from downtown east west to the creek in 6th Street has some significant capacity limitations, and even minor flooding does occur today with significant rainfall events. So repairing curbing, adding catch basins, and increasing the storage capacity of that storm main system would help address that condition in downtown. And that does present a risk to property damage during those intense precipitation events. I guess on conclusion, and looking at the overall study area against the 10 identified criteria, as was concluded in 2007, we find that there is significant deterioration of the public infrastructure documented by the study that constitutes an economic and social liability by inhibiting access by persons with disabilities, normalizing and perpetuating site and building deterioration, and discouraging private investment, and by presenting a risk to persons or property within the study area. So those, I think, we feel does substantially impair or arrest the sound growth of the city and would be considered to be a deteriorating or deteriorated area. So the consideration for the council this evening, the Musco Urban Agency reviewed this at their meeting on March 1st, 2008, and approved the eligibility study and to approve the transmittal of it to the city council at their meeting at that time. If the council concurs with the conclusions of the study, the council can approve the study and pass the associated resolution to authorize the Musco Urban Agency to prepare the plan amendment for the council's consideration. And with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any question you may have.
Questions for Bill? Good presentation. Well, we got two counselors up here that are on that. Herb, I'll start with you, Art, and then I'll go to
Absolutely.
Brandy, because you and Brandy are both on this.
Yeah, I think this is a program that we should begin to undertake and begin the studies. It's not going to happen overnight. It'll take some while to get done by way of developing the plans as well as getting some more tax increment into the URA to be used for this. But getting it started means the wheels are turning and we can get further towards revitalizing the Main Street hardscapes much sooner than if we did nothing. So I'm very heartily in support of this whole project.
Okay, Brandy.
Yeah, I think it's a very appropriate, small, one-time expansion of the existing Legacy Crossing District that is entirely appropriate and is needed, and I'm glad that we have that tool for the, to benefit the city and talk about, something that benefits the whole, a lot of people in this city. These improvements to just expand that district will accomplish that. So it was third time I think we've seen that presentation.
These two have seen
And I
it a
like
number
it.
of different times. Other questions for Bill?
Well, seeing as I'm not hearing any, I think we should receive that eligibility study and authorize the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency to proceed with the development of the amendment to the Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal Plan.
Second that.
Okay.
In your honor, did that motion also include passage of the resolution?
No, it didn't. Is there a resolution?
It says, receive the eligibility study and approve the attached resolution to authorize the Moscow Urban Renewal
wow.
Agency to proceed with the development of the amendment to the Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal Plan.
Just skipped over that part.
That's the
Yeah.
part, you missed that.
I didn't see it here.
Well, here, you want to read it over here? I got to write it
No, I'll
down.
just take your word for it, thank you.
I just want to make sure the motion reflects the
So-
passage of the resolution.
Yes, it should reflect that.
So do we have that motion correct? Lori, you got that? Okay, any further discussion? I'll start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 All right. Okay, thank you very much. Bill? We'll go to item number 9, which is waiver of qualified Syringa mobile home and installation fees. Gary Reedner, sir, you have got the podium.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a situation that came up, the Community Development received an inquiry from a person who potentially wanted to move a mobile home, which is currently located in the Syringa Mobile Home Park, east of Moscow. As you know, Syringa has had some issues with wastewater, water service, and general upkeep, and has been regulated by Latah County, and is generally, my understanding is that it will be closed, or the owner will be closing it. A lot of the mobile homes in the park are uninhabitable at this time and have been red tagged by the county. There are some habitable mobile homes out there, and some of those residents are weighing their options to determine whether they can move, and if so, are they able to move their mobile home. You can have a mobile home in Syringa that could move to a mobile home park in the city if it meets certain criteria, and those criteria are set out by the state of Idaho and our own building regulations. So not every mobile home that's located at Syringa would be able to be eligible to meet that criteria to be able to be placed in a suitable mobile home park in Moscow. So if there are those mobile homes that would be eligible, the council has mentioned in the past that they are amenable to trying to alleviate some of the hardships of the people who are caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place by the closure of Syringa. This is an opportunity that the council could extend some relief to a person who wanted to relocate their mobile home from Syringa to the city of Moscow, again, conditioned upon that mobile home meeting the criteria to be able to be relocated in the first place. There is roughly about $200 worth of hookup fees that are charged when a person wants to hook up a mobile home in Moscow. Mobile home installation fee of $55, the mobile home electrical connection of $66.50, mobile home gas connection of $32, and mobile home plumbing connection of $47.25. I've talked to Bill Knapp about this, our Community Development Director, who you just heard the eligibility study from in his other capacity as Urban Renewal Agency Executive Director. Thinks that probably the maximum number of homes that would be eligible to be moved in town would not top probably 10. So if that's the case, if all of those mobile homes could be moved into the city and they met the criteria, you're looking at about $2,000 of waived fees. The reason we're bringing this to you, if it was an individual waiver, we would handle it administratively. But since we expect that there will be multiple instances of a waiver being requested, that we would like the council to give a direction on the waiver of this fee, which is duly authorized under our fee resolution.
Well, and we do know that within a few months, those folks are going to have to move. That is no doubt about it. So, questions for Gary?
How many people have approached the city with the idea that they would be moving their home into the city?
One inquiry has been made so far, unless another one has been made since, Bill. So only one has been made so far, but my understanding is the mobile home isn't, or the park is not due to be closed until sometime in late May or June. So there's probably
June
some
5th
people
was
still
the
weighing
date,
their
yeah.
options.
So the total cost we're looking at here is probably not more than $2,500.
That would, yes, that's what we're anticipating.
Yeah. Art? Yeah, from my point of view, this is a relatively minor amount of fees to be waived to assist people who are in life-changing, rather draconian circumstances, and for a minor amount of waiver on the part of the city, we can really help these people out to get over probably one of the toughest times in their lives, and I think it's highly appropriate that we do so.
Great.
With that, I would move that we waive the mobile home installation fee for qualified homes currently located in Syringa Mobile Home Park, wishing to be relocated into the city of Moscow at this time.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jim and a second by Gina to waive the mobile home installation fees for qualified homes located within the Syringa Mobile Home Park, wishing to be relocated within the city limits of Moscow. And then second by Gina, of course. Further discussion before I start to roll? I'll go to you, Jim.
I would just say, Bill, I'm glad that you, and Gary, I mean, brainstorm to say, let's bring it to council, because I think that, I heard many of us talk about, we wish we could do something to help that situation that's in the county, and it's a small thing, but it's something that the council can do, so I'm glad you brought it forward to us.
Start with you, Jim.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you, Gary. We'll move on to item number 10, which is the way, setting the date for the 2019 budget hearing for August the 6th, 2018, Gary.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you know, every year we have to give Latah County notice of when the public hearing on our annual municipal budget will be held. Typically, this has been held, the sequence is the council usually has their budget workshop the second Monday and Tuesday of July, unless the 4th of July falls on a particular day of the week. However, once that workshop is done, changes are made to the budget, we get it back to council as quickly as possible for public hearing. We do that state law is that the budget has to be in place prior to October 1st, because that's the beginning of the subsequent fiscal year. So we put it on the first meeting in August, the typical recommendation from staff, so the council can consider it. If they do not get sufficient votes to pass the appropriation ordinance on first reading, then you'd have 3 subsequent readings and 1 extra council meeting before the budget must be passed by October 1st. So this gives the council plenty of leeway to do what they want. It has never happened in my time here that the budget ever went past 2 readings. So we don't anticipate it'll be an issue, but we want to give you plenty of flexibility so you don't have any time pressures. So August 6th is the recommendation staff would make, and if approved by council tonight, the city clerk will notify Latah County of that date, which has to be done by the end of this month.
I'm glad to have the advance notice.
It's coming. It comes every year, folks. Any questions for Gary? Okay.
Your Honor, I move that we set the August 6, 2018 as the public hearing date for the City of Moscow FY 2019 budget.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Gina and a second by Art to set August 6, 2018 as a public hearing date for the City of Moscow FY 2019 budget. I'll start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay, consider it August the 6th. Thank you.
Amen.
With that, that's the end of our regular meeting. We'll go into reports really quick from councilors, and I will start with you, Gina.
Okay, I have no personal reports to make because my meetings all happened this week. I do have one from Catherine, who is unable to be here this evening, and I will quickly go through them. For the farmers market specifically, registration of vendors has opened successfully, and about half of the usual vendor base is in right now. And that's really exciting, and the invoicing is starting with that. The programming calendar is filling out, and the staff is finishing the final details. That's the chefs in the market and the where they let the little kids choose the vegetables, that kind of cool stuff. The entertainment calendar is filled, which is awesome, and that always happens first. The first of the juries is coming soon, on April 4th, in fact, within a couple days, and that, if you haven't done it, you should. And don't plan lunch that day. Submissions for the market poster are due by 5 o'clock on Wednesday as well. They have 6 submissions for the market poster this year. It's exciting. As for the public library, the community workshops we got to see last week, and I think it was committees that Kathleen did a little kind of an update on the cool Melissa Cole public art workshops. Those have been completed, and 120 participants worked on pieces that they can walk by every year from here on out and point to theirs. Art Walk host locations and artist applications are available right now. The deadline is 5 p.m. Friday, May 4th. I don't think there's any beatings for late applications, but there's rules. Entertainment in the park schedule has been finalized for Thursday nights in June. Yes, summer will be here at some point, and we'll have some fun in the park. And the 3rd Street Gallery exhibit, A Palouse Horse, which you can go right now and see, runs through Tuesday, April 24th. And that's all I have from Catherine.
And just as a reminder, 4 weeks from Saturday is the opening of farmers market. So even though we have a little shot of snow, it's coming quick. Brandy, I'll go to you.
Let's see, Sustainable Environment Commission. Kelly Cooper gave a report on the progress to date this year with the toilet and Yscape rebates, and they're already have received more participation, significantly more at this stage in the year than last year, so that continues to grow. More and more people taking advantage of that, including 2 commercial entities. She also reported out April 22nd, SEC is hosting the Wings of Life at the Kenworthy, which is all about pollinators. It's from a whole event from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. There's discussion about Earth Day Awards. They're busy getting nominations in, gathering those, and this will be announced later in April. And their ongoing discussion about pesticide-free parks. And historic preservation. The very cool thing is they've been working on the interpretive sign for the 1912 Center, similar to what's on campus, and it's just about done. There's the Michael had a whole big color, full size, and it's beautiful, and it's going to be very great. So they were just tweaking little layouts here and there, and he was very patient and accommodating for everyone's like, maybe if we just move this up a tiny bit. There was also discussion about topics for the 2018 Preservation Moscow insert that comes in the paper, and they're leaning towards a theme of sidewalk culture in Moscow. It's like sitting on your porch, looking out onto the sidewalk, and being on the sidewalk, looking through as you're walking on sidewalks. So there's a lot of really great ideas there, and the Orchid Awards and Fort Russell expansion celebration, they're looking at September 20th, having that as a joint event. So that's it for me.
Very good, Brandy. Jim?
The only meeting I attended since the last meeting was the PVAC retreat. Everybody on the Police Basin Aquifer Committee got together at the Best Western for about 3 hours and talked about where we're going with this in the near future and out in the distant future as well. And kind of the consensus of that is that, water's a very important thing, and that in this area we are way ahead of the curve nationally or internationally in terms of looking at the options that are out there and identifying what needs to be done should we need an alternative water source. Also, there was, pretty great consensus that we need to stop dumping potable water on the ground for irrigation, and that's probably the first thing we can do. Is in terms of we don't need anyone else's approval to reuse water or to use surface water that we already have rights to irrigate lawns and golf courses and things like that. So that's kind of where we're going, and there's a number of studies underway to define how much water is in the ground in the two aquifers, and there's actually some progress going on there. But there's a 2-year study going on now to identify just how much water's there and how it flows through the aquifers. Also, there's a study going on in how expensive it would be to take the water from the North Fork of the Palouse River and take the turbidity out of it and make it to be usable water as a usable water source. So what actually has to go on there in order to make that a usable source? So things are moving forward in that regard, and it's pretty groundbreaking.
Great. Arthur?
Nothing happened in the last couple of weeks.
Okay, man.
I attended one meeting, and it was Planning and Zoning last Wednesday, and the bulk of it was a public hearing on the proposal for a preliminary subdivision plat, and that would be Indian Hills 9th edition. So we discussed that possible plat and then also having to rezone it. So the commission, there were a couple people who came and attended and had some concerns. They live on Indian Hills and wanted to know about things like building height so that their views weren't blocked, additional traffic, that kind of thing. But overall, the commission seemed very favorable about it. And in particular, really liked that there was a range of density. So some of it will be R2, some of it will be R3. And there's a proposed path from Palouse Prairie Charter School into the neighborhood so that people can walk and kids can walk directly through, which they were also very fond of. That's cool.
Okay, I got two things I want to report. On 28th, there was a Recovery Center breakfast that Chief Fry emceed. I got a chance to speak at that. And man, alive, this was out at the Best Western. There was over 280 people there for that. Brandy was there as well as Art. And it was amazing. This is the third one, and every single year it's like they double the amount of people that come to these. Yeah, they raised over $27,000 at that event, which was...
Latest count is over 28.
Well, that was the quick and dirty, Art, so maybe you are in tune to where it is, so you can report back in 2 weeks and tell me exactly what it is. But anyway, it was over $27,000.
By the way, congratulations to you for a very good presentation.
Well, thank you, Art. I have a tendency, I know it's hard to believe, but when I get excited about something, I go off, and I had a good time with it. But it's a very, very important message, the opioid use in this country, and it's an epidemic. I mean, it's just a mess, and it needs to be fixed. And for us in the community, our community, and every single community in this country, they need to work on it. And I'll just give you one statistic that I said at that meeting. The United States population is 4.3% of the world's population, and we consume 81% of the opioids. Now, does that suggest we have a problem? And it does. It's a huge mess. And I went off on a bunch of numbers because I'm a number guy anyway, but this was down at National League of Cities that I went to. I went to a seminar this year. I went to one last year, and it's just amazing. I mean, well over 200 people were at this year and was last year, and it is just an amazing problem we have. And we will get it fixed. But the thing of it is, for us as a community, we need to work together to get our stuff in our community done. We move forward, and hopefully we can be example setters for others in Idaho. And also that same day, we had an airport board meeting, and the big discussion on there was the possibility of a new terminal. There's a lot of talk about that, and the funding and different things, other grants that are coming out that may be a possibility in 2020, and so there will be more information for that to come. So, Gary, do you have anything for us?
All I have is our quarterly regional breakfast meeting is this Wednesday in Colfax, hosted by Whitman County. I will be attending, and I imagine Les McDonald will be as well. So we'll be representing the city.
Okay. With that,
7:30?
7:30. Is anybody else going to go? Oh, great. Cool.
we'll give them our best while you're there, because I'll be out of town that day, so for sure of it. I would entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session per Idaho Code 74-206, 1C and 1F. And at the end of that, this meeting will not reconvene.
So moved.
Second? Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, aye? Aye.
We just don't want the regular meeting to end. What's happening here?
I'll do the executive session.
Can I second my own motion?
I was looking around from
I would second my own motion, I would.
I was-
When is this, the budget work?